My name doesn't matter. I'm 28 years old, and I spent 11 years as muscle for one of Chicago's most feared street gangs. Everyone thinks gang violence is about turf wars and drug corners, but that's the first lie they want you to believe. The real power isn't the shot caller with the gold chain and the Glock. It's a man in a tailored suit sitting in a city council chamber, voting on zoning laws by day and ordering hits by night. I know because I watched my boss, a man who controlled 6 blocks of the South Side and had bodies on top of bodies, literally bow his head and say "yes, sir" to an alderman who's never fired a gun in his life. Before I tell you how deep this corruption goes, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story cost me everything: my freedom, my family, my city. Chicago's political machine doesn't want you to know what I'm about to expose. Subscribe now before this gets buried, because what you're about to hear isn't just my confession, it's the truth about who really controls the streets of America's most corrupt city. I was born in 1996 in Englewood, Southside, Chicago. If you're not from Chicago, you might not understand what that means. Englewood isn't just poor, it's a war zone. By the time I was 10, I'd heard gunshots so often they became background noise like traffic or rain. My father was gone before I could form memories of him. My mother worked at a laundromat on 63rd Street, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, bringing home barely enough to keep us in a 2-bedroom apartment with bars on the windows. We lived in a building where the heat only worked sometimes, where the hallways smelled like urine and weed, where you learned early not to look at certain people the wrong way. My mother did everything she could, but minimum wage in Chicago in the early 2000s wasn't enough for anything except survival. We ate a lot of ramen, a lot of dollar store food. New clothes came once a year if I was lucky. I wore shoes with holes in them for months because we couldn't afford replacements. But my mother had hope. She believed in education, in keeping your head down, in working hard. She believed the system would reward honesty and effort. That belief died along with her when I was 15. She was walking home from the laundromat one February night. Wrong place, wrong time. 2 guys from a rival set got into it on the corner where she was waiting for the bus. Shots fired. She took one in the chest. The ambulance came 40 minutes later because they don't rush to Englewood for gunshot victims. Too many of them, not enough ambulances. She bled out on the sidewalk while people walked past and pretended not to see. The police came, took notes, promised investigation. Nothing happened. No arrests, no justice, no accountability. She became another statistic, another black woman killed in gang crossfire that the city didn't care about. Her murder broke something fundamental in me. The system my mother believed in had let her die on a street corner like she was garbage. The funeral cost more than we had. We had to do a GoFundMe to bury her. That humiliation, begging strangers on the internet for money to put my mother in the ground. It changed me. I stopped believing in the system that day. If the system wouldn't protect us, wouldn't value us, wouldn't even investigate my mother's murder, then why should I follow its rules? A week after the funeral, a guy named Terrell approached me. He was older, mid-20s, affiliated with the Four Corner Hustlers, one of the sets that ran our area. He'd known my mother, knew our situation. He told me he was sorry for my loss. Then he asked if I needed work. The way he said it, I knew what kind of work he meant. I was 15 years old, angry, broke, and alone. I said yes. The first job was simple lookout duty. Stand on the corner, watch for police, text if anything looks wrong. They paid me $200 for 6 hours. That was more money than I'd ever held at once. It felt like power, like finally having some control over my life. I kept doing it. The money was consistent, reliable, more than any legitimate job would pay a 15-year-old dropout. Within 6 months, I'd dropped out of school completely. What was the point? School promised a future that didn't exist for kids like me. The streets promised immediate cash and respect. By 16, I wasn't just a lookout anymore. I was running packages, making deliveries, learning the business. By 17, they gave me my first gun. Holding that pistol for the first time was surreal. It was heavy, cold, powerful. It represented everything I'd become. A weapon, a tool, something dangerous that people had to respect or fear. I told myself I'd only use it for protection, that I wouldn't become a killer. That promise lasted about 8 months. My first body was a guy from a rival set who'd been hitting our corners, disrespecting our people. Terrell gave me the green light, told me it was time to prove myself, time to show I was really about that life. I found the guy at a gas station on Ashland Avenue, walked up behind him while he was pumping gas. 3 shots to the back. I was 18 years old, and I'd just ended someone's life like it was nothing. I expected to feel something: guilt, remorse, horror. Instead, I felt numb, hollow, like I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and the only way forward was to keep going. After that first one, it got easier. Not easier like enjoyable, but easier like routine, like any other part of the job. By 20, I was full enforcer. My job was to handle problems, collect debts, punish disrespect, protect territory, eliminate threats. I was good at it because I didn't hesitate, didn't ask questions, didn't feel. I'd learned to shut off the part of me that cared about consequences. In that world, hesitation gets you killed. Empathy makes you weak. Terrell became like a father figure to me. He taught me the rules of the street, how to move, how to survive. He looked out for me, made sure I ate, made sure I had a place to stay when my mother's apartment got taken over by her landlord. He was the closest thing to family I had left. By 23, I was Terrell's right hand. I went everywhere with him, handled his security, executed his orders. He controlled 6 blocks of prime South Side territory. The money from corners, from protection rackets, from various hustles brought in serious cash. We weren't rich like the white people downtown, but we had power in our world. We had respect. I thought Terrell was the top. I thought he made the decisions, ran the operation, controlled the territory. I thought we were independent, our own bosses, kings of our small kingdom. That delusion lasted until March 2023. Terrell got a call on a phone I'd never seen before. His whole demeanor changed, went from relaxed to tense immediately. He told me we had a meeting in Hyde Park, on the border between the South Side and the nicer areas near University of Chicago. This was unusual. We never went to Hyde Park. That was different territory, different world. We drove there in silence. Terrell seemed nervous, which was wrong. Terrell didn't get nervous. He'd survived 3 attempts on his life, had killed more people than I could count, had been shot twice and kept moving. But that phone call had shaken him. The meeting was at a restaurant, not a corner spot or a hood joint, but an actual upscale restaurant with cloth napkins and wine lists. We walked in, and sitting at a corner booth was a white man in his late 50s. Grey hair, expensive suit, designer glasses. He looked like a lawyer or a banker. Next to him was another man, younger, also suited up, with an iPad and a leather folder. Terrell walked over to that booth, and his entire energy shifted. The confidence evaporated. His shoulders dropped. His voice got quieter, more careful. He sat down across from the older man, with a deference I'd never seen from him. The respect he showed this stranger was nothing like the respect he demanded from everyone else. This was submission. I stood a few feet away, trying to be invisible, but I could hear parts of the conversation. The older man spoke with calm authority, like a CEO addressing an employee. He wasn't yelling or threatening. He didn't need to. His power was in his position, his connections, his legitimacy. He talked about territory adjustments, about revenue expectations, about problems that needed handling. He mentioned street names, block numbers, specific businesses. He knew our operation in detail, better than I did, and I lived it every day. He pulled out papers from the folder, showing maps, financial projections, development plans. Development plans, that's when it started clicking. This wasn't about drugs or guns. This was about real estate. The man explained to Terrell that certain blocks needed to be cleared, certain businesses needed to close, certain families needed to leave. The language was corporate, sanitized, but the meaning was clear. We were being given assignments to terrorize our own community, to make way for gentrification. Terrell just nodded, took notes on his phone, asked clarifying questions about timelines and methods. He was taking orders like an employee in a performance review. After an hour, the meeting ended. The older man stood, buttoned his jacket, and left without shaking hands or saying goodbye. Terrell sat there for a minute after he left, staring at his phone, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. On the drive back to Englewood, I finally asked who that was. Terrell looked at me for a long moment, calculating whether to tell me the truth. Finally he said, "The man was Alderman Richard Morrison, 7th Ward representative on Chicago City Council, one of the most powerful politicians in the South Side. A man who'd been in office for 26 years, who controlled millions in city funding, who decided which streets got paved and which stayed broken." That's when my world inverted. Everything I thought I understood about power, about who ran what, it was all wrong. The gang wasn't independent. We weren't rebels or outlaws. We were employees, tools. The alderman used us to clear areas for development, to drive down property values so his real estate partners could buy cheap. Then once we'd destroyed the neighborhood, once all the black families were gone, the developers would come in, build condos and sell them to white professionals for 10 times what they paid. We weren't gangsters. We were the gentrification shock troops. We were being used to destroy our own community for someone else's profit. 3 weeks after that meeting, Terrell called me in for a private conversation. He had a list, 12 names, people in our crew who knew too much, who'd become liabilities, who might talk. My stomach dropped when I saw the 4th name. Marcus, my best friend since we were kids. The only person left who remembered me before all this, who knew my mother, who'd been there at her funeral. Marcus and I went back to kindergarten. We grew up in the same building, played on the same broken playground, survived the same streets. When my mother died, Marcus's family took me in for 3 months. His mother fed me, his grandmother prayed over me, his little sister treated me like family. Marcus was the only person left who knew me before I became what I am. He remembered the kid who wanted to be a firefighter, who believed in heroes, who thought the world could be good. Marcus got into the life the same way I did, poverty and lack of options. He wasn't high up in the organization, just a corner manager handling street-level distribution in our territory. He was reliable, loyal, never caused problems. But Marcus had one weakness: he cared too much. He'd been noticing the same patterns I had, the way our violence seemed strategically targeted, the way certain blocks got hit harder than others, the way families were being driven out systematically. 2 weeks before the list, Marcus had mentioned to me that something felt wrong. He'd noticed that every building we burned, every business we shut down, every family we terrorized, 6 months later, developers would swoop in. White people with money buying up properties for nothing. He'd started asking questions, connecting dots. That curiosity signed his death warrant. The morning after I saw that list, I couldn't eat, couldn't think. Marcus's name kept burning in my mind. I knew what happened to people on that list. I'd put enough of them in the ground myself. This was different. This was family. Terrell called me that afternoon. The tone in his voice told me everything before he even said it. I needed to come to his spot immediately. When I arrived, he was alone in his apartment, looking out the window at the street below. He explained it coldly, clinically. Marcus had been flagged by the Alderman's people as a security risk. Too curious, too connected, too moral. He knew enough to be dangerous if he ever decided to talk. The decision had come from the top. It needed to look like a rival set hit, random gang violence, nothing that would draw attention. And because Marcus and I were known to be close, because everyone in Englewood knew we were like brothers, I was the one who had to do it. If anyone else did it, people might suspect internal cleaning. If I did it, it sent the message Terrell needed to send. The organization comes before everything. Before friendship, before loyalty, before family. I felt ice spread through my chest. This wasn't a request. In our world, nothing from Terrell was a request. Refuse, and I'd be on tomorrow's list. My name would be given to someone else to handle, and they wouldn't just stop with me. They'd go after Marcus anyway, plus anyone who might question my disappearance. Terrell handed me a burner phone with a text thread. I'd already set it up, he said. Marcus thought we were meeting for drinks at a bar on 71st Street. He trusted me completely. Why wouldn't he? I was his brother. I spent the next 2 days in hell. I went through the motions, collected some debts, handled some business, pretended everything was normal. But inside, I was disintegrating. I kept thinking about all the times Marcus had my back. The time he took a beating meant for me when we were 14. The time he lied to police to give me an alibi. The way he'd shown up to my mother's funeral and cried as hard as I did. Thursday night came. I met Marcus at the bar like we'd planned. He was already there, sitting in a booth, drinking a beer, looking tired. When he saw me, his face lit up with that genuine smile he had, the one that reminded me we used to be innocent. He stood up, gave me that half hug, half handshake greeting, asked how I was doing, if I'd eaten, if everything was good. We talked for an hour about nothing important, basketball, girls, old memories from before everything went dark. Marcus was in a good mood. He'd just sent money to his mother for the first time in months, felt good about helping out. He talked about maybe getting out eventually, finding something legitimate, breaking the cycle. The hope in his voice was the worst part. I suggested we take a drive. I told him I wanted to show him something, a potential new corner we might take over. He was interested, always thinking about the work, about moving up, about providing for his family. That's who Marcus was, a good person trapped in a terrible situation, trying to make the best of it. We got in my car. I drove toward Washington Park, toward the empty areas near the abandoned buildings. Marcus started to notice the route, started to get quiet. I could feel him looking at me, trying to read the situation. His hand moved subtly toward his waistband. He always carried. I pulled into an abandoned lot behind a shuttered factory, cut the engine but left it running. The silence was deafening. Marcus turned to look at me, and I saw it in his eyes. He knew. Not the specifics maybe, but he knew something was very wrong. For a moment we just looked at each other. Two kids from Englewood who'd grown into killers. Two friends who'd shared everything. Two brothers about to have one execute the other. I pulled my gun from under my seat. Marcus's hand went to his piece, but he didn't draw. He could have. He was fast enough, but he didn't. Instead, he just looked at me, with the saddest expression I've ever seen. Not fear, not anger. Just profound disappointment, like I'd let him down in the worst possible way. I fired 4 times. Professional, quick, the way I'd been trained. Center mass. Marcus slumped against the door, blood spreading across his Bulls jersey. His eyes stayed open for a few seconds, still looking at me, before everything left them. I sat there in that car for maybe 20 minutes. Engine idling, the smell of gunpowder mixing with blood. My hands weren't shaking. That was the most horrifying part. I'd just killed my best friend, my brother, the last piece of my humanity, and my hands were steady. I'd become exactly what the system needed me to be, a perfect tool, efficient and emotionless. I disposed of the body in the Calumet River, the same river where Marcus and I used to fish as kids. I weighted him down with chains and watched him sink into the dark water, taking my last connection to who I used to be with him. When I reported back to Terrell, he barely looked up, just nodded, made a phone call, presumably to the Alderman's people, confirming the situation was handled. Then he handed me an envelope. $20,000. Performance bonus, he called it. Blood money for murdering my own brother. That money sat in my apartment for a week. I couldn't touch it, couldn't look at it. Finally, I took it to Marcus's mother. Told her Marcus had borrowed money from me a while back, that this was what he owed me. She cried and hugged me, thanked me for being such a good friend to her son. I wanted to die, right there in her arms. The funeral was 3 days later. I stood in the back of the church, watching Marcus's little sister cry over the casket. The pastor talked about senseless violence, about how the city had failed its children, about how we needed to do better. I thought about the alderman in his city hall office, probably reviewing property values, planning his next development project, not giving a single thought to the boy I'd just put in the ground for him. After the funeral, something fundamental broke in me. I started seeing the whole operation differently. Over the next few weeks, I paid closer attention to everything. I noticed patterns I'd been blind to before. The alderman's territory exactly matched where our gang operated. Every area we cleared of residents became a development zone within months. The businesses we burned down got replaced by coffee shops and boutiques. The families we terrorized got replaced by young white professionals who paid triple the rent. We were urban renewal's violent arm, doing the dirty work that couldn't be done legally. And Alderman Morrison was just one piece of a larger machine. I started recognizing other aldermen, other politicians at our meetings. I saw state representatives, judges, police commanders, all of them using gangs as tools, all of them profiting while we took the risks and did the killing. The genius of the system was how it made us complicit in destroying our own community. We thought we were powerful, thought we were outlaws, thought we were building something. In reality, we were just weapons pointed at ourselves by people who lived in suburbs and never had to see the damage. I realized I had a choice. Stay in Chicago and keep being a tool until someone decided I was expendable, or run. Try to escape, build something different, maybe find redemption somewhere far from this corrupted city. Running meant leaving everything, my territory, my reputation, my only remaining connections. But staying meant becoming more of a monster than I already was. The list would keep growing. More Marcuses would need to be eliminated. More friends would have to be sacrificed for the alderman's real estate portfolio. I started planning carefully, Over 4 months I skimmed money from collections, small amounts that wouldn't be noticed immediately, attributed to street-level theft. I accumulated $60,000, hidden in a storage unit on the west side under a fake name. I made contact with someone in Gary, Indiana, who specialized in fake documents. Cost me $10,000 for a complete package: birth certificate, social security card, driver's license, work history. My new name was David Jenkins from Indianapolis. I spent weeks memorizing his life story, practicing his signature, erasing myself piece by piece. The plan was to disappear during a collection run to the western suburbs. These runs happened weekly, took all day, involved minimal supervision. I'd just drive to the airport instead of coming back, ditch the car, catch a flight to Milwaukee, and vanish into a new identity. I set the date for July 15th, 2023. I'd been planning for 16 weeks, ever since Marcus. Every day felt like walking on a knife edge, knowing one mistake would put me in the river next to him. 2 days before my planned escape, everything nearly fell apart. Terrell called an emergency meeting. The Alderman's people had noticed discrepancies in our revenue reports. Small amounts but consistent. Pattern analysis suggested internal theft. Everyone who handled money would be audited within the week. My blood went cold. Professional accountants would find my skimming easily. I had maybe 48 hours before they connected the dots. Couldn't wait for the 15th. Had to go immediately. That night, I loaded my car with everything essential: fake documents, cash, 1 bag of clothes. I drove out of Chicago at 3 a.m., watching the skyline disappear in my rearview mirror. The city that raised me, that destroyed me, that turned me into a killer. I was leaving it behind forever. I drove straight to Milwaukee, 5 hours of paranoia and adrenaline. Every cop car made my heart race. Every toll booth felt like a trap. But I made it. Checked into a motel with cash, using my new name. I was 28 years old. I'd just erased my entire existence. David Jenkins was born in a Milwaukee motel parking lot, carrying blood money and borrowed identity. For the first time in 11 years, I was free from the Alderman's machine. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Milwaukee was a different world. Still Midwest, still urban, but without the crushing weight of Chicago's corruption. The city felt smaller, more manageable, less suffocating. I could breathe here in a way I couldn't in Chicago. The constant paranoia that someone was watching, that violence could erupt any second. It was still there but quieter, like background static instead of screaming alarm. I rented a studio apartment on the north side, a working-class area with a mix of black and Latino families. The landlord took cash and didn't ask questions beyond basic ID verification. My fake documents held up. David Jenkins from Indianapolis, looking for factory work in Milwaukee. Nobody cared enough to dig deeper. The first month was brutal. I'd wake up drenched in sweat at 4 a.m., convinced I heard footsteps in the hallway. Every car that lingered too long outside was coming for me. Every stranger who looked twice was an enforcer sent from Chicago. I'd see Marcus's face constantly, that final look of disappointment before the light left his eyes. The guilt sat in my chest like a stone, making breathing difficult. But the human mind adapts to survive. After 6 weeks, the panic attacks decreased. After 3 months, I could sleep through most nights. The paranoia never fully disappeared. I still varied my routes, still avoided cameras, still kept a gun under my mattress, but it became manageable. I learned to live with being a ghost. I needed legitimate work. The money wouldn't last forever, And idle hands meant idle minds, meant thinking too much about what I'd done. I found a job at a brewery on the south side, working the bottling line. 10-hour shifts, repetitive labor, honest pay. The work was mind-numbing but clean. Nobody asked about my past. I was just another body filling bottles with beer. The legitimacy was intoxicating. Wake up, work, come home tired, collect a paycheck with taxes deducted. It was boring. It was beautiful. For the first time since I was 15, I wasn't calculating threats or anticipating violence. I was just existing, just surviving without destroying anyone else. I made strict rules for myself. No connections, no relationships, nothing that could become leverage or liability. I was polite but distant with co-workers. I didn't go to bars after shifts. I didn't date. I was a shell of a person, visible but empty. That strategy worked perfectly for 13 months. Then I met Jennifer. She worked at a diner across from the brewery, one of those classic Milwaukee spots with cheese curds and brandy old fashions. I'd stop there for breakfast before my shift. She was the morning waitress, early 30s, with an easy smile and kind eyes. She was from Green Bay, moved to Milwaukee for a job that didn't work out, stayed because she liked the city. We started talking, small stuff at first, weather and Packers games. She asked about me, and I fed her the David Jenkins story I'd rehearsed 1,000 times. From Indianapolis, came to Milwaukee for work, keeping quiet and saving money. The lies came automatically, because I'd lived them long enough they felt almost real. But with Jennifer, something shifted. When I talked to her, I had to consciously maintain the fiction, which meant part of me wanted to tell the truth. That was dangerous. I should have stopped going to that diner, should have found another place, kept my distance, followed my rules. But loneliness is its own kind of death, slow and suffocating, and I'd been dying of it for so long I didn't even recognize how desperate I was for human connection. After 4 months of breakfast conversations, Jennifer asked if I wanted to get dinner sometime. I knew what she was really asking. I knew I should decline. Every survival instinct screamed at me to walk away. But I heard myself saying yes, and the happiness in her face made the danger feel worth it. That dinner turned into more. Within 7 months, we were spending most of our free time together. She was everything I wasn't, open, honest, uncomplicated by violence and guilt. She talked about small dreams, saving up for a house, maybe going back to school for nursing, visiting her parents more often. Normal dreams that normal people have. I fell in love with her quietly, gradually, like learning to breathe again after being underwater. She made me feel human, like David Jenkins could be real, like I could become someone other than the monster from Chicago. With her, I almost believed in redemption. 14 months after arriving in Milwaukee, Jennifer and I moved in together. A small house in Bayview, nothing fancy, but it was ours. She talked about the future constantly, where we'd be in 5 years, what kind of wedding we'd have, how many kids, and I kept lying, kept building a life on sand, knowing the tide would eventually come. It came on a Thursday morning in September 2024. I was at the brewery, working the bottling line. My supervisor came over looking uncomfortable, said someone was asking for me at the front office. Family emergency, they claimed. I knew instantly. That familiar ice spread through my chest. I followed my supervisor anyway, because running would only delay the inevitable. The man waiting wasn't from Chicago. He was younger, late 20s, wearing Carhartt work clothes like he belonged at the brewery. But his boots were too clean, his hands too soft. He was playing dress-up as a working man. My supervisor left us alone. The The man gestured toward a pickup truck in the parking lot. I walked over, mind already racing through options that didn't exist. Inside the truck, he opened a manila folder. Photographs. The first showed me leaving my house that morning with Jennifer. The second showed Jennifer at the diner. The third was surveillance footage of me at the brewery. The fourth made my blood freeze. Marcus's mother at a grocery store in Englewood, completely unaware someone was watching her. They knew everything. They'd always known. The man spoke calmly, professionally, like delivering a weather report instead of a death sentence. Alderman Morrison had been very understanding about my departure. He recognized I'd needed time to process my evolution within the organization. 16 months was generous. But vacation was over. Chicago needed me back. There was expansion planned, new territories opening, new development projects requiring clearance. My skills were required. I had 72 hours to return to Chicago and report to the alderman's office directly. I asked the question, even though I knew the answer. What if I didn't? He gestured at the photographs. Then they'd start with Marcus's family, his mother, his little sister, her kids. Then Jennifer. Then anyone else I might have connected with in Milwaukee. He assured me the alderman didn't want violence. He preferred cooperation. But he was a practical man who understood incentives. Sometimes people needed reminders about where their loyalties belonged. The man handed me a business card with an address in Chicago's Loop. The alderman was looking forward to meeting me personally. He appreciated loyalty and understood that good employees sometimes needed sabbaticals. Then the man left, and I sat in that truck, surrounded by evidence of my failure. The photographs mocked me, proof that escape had always been illusion, that freedom had never been real. I could run again. Take Jennifer, disappear deeper into America. But they'd found me once in a city of 600,000 people. They'd find me again, and next time wouldn't be polite recruitment. It would be bodies in the river. I could go to police, try federal witness protection. But Alderman Morrison had connections everywhere. Chicago PD, FBI, state prosecutors. Who would believe a former gang enforcer over a city council member with 26 years in office and impeccable public reputation? The truth was simple and terrible. I had no moves left. The alderman had played this game perfectly. He'd let me run specifically, so I'd build something worth protecting. A man with nothing can't be controlled, but a man with everything to lose. That man becomes perfectly obedient. That night, I told Jennifer I had a family emergency in Indianapolis. My aunt was sick, needed help settling affairs. I'd explain everything when I got back. She believed me because she loved me, and trust comes with love. She kissed me goodbye and told me to drive safely. I tasted the lie bitter on my tongue. I drove to Chicago the next morning. What was the point of delaying? 2 more days of pretending wouldn't change anything. The address led to an office building in the Loop, the heart of downtown Chicago. Alderman Morrison's office was on the 15th floor, with views of Lake Michigan. He was sitting behind a massive desk when I arrived, reviewing documents, looking exactly like what he was. A successful politician with power and legitimacy. He didn't stand when I entered, just gestured to a chair across from him like I was early for an appointment. For an hour, he explained my new role. I wouldn't be doing street enforcement anymore. That chapter was closed. Instead, I'd be community outreach coordination. My job would be identifying which neighborhoods needed clearing, which businesses needed closing, which families needed incentivizing to leave. I'd manage the crews doing the actual work, but I'd do it from an office, wearing business casual, with a legitimate city contractor job as cover. It was a promotion. From street muscle to management. From violence to strategy. The pay would be excellent, 60,000 a year on paper, plus bonuses off the books. I'd have benefits, a 401k, respectability. And regarding Jennifer, Marcus's family, everyone I cared about, they'd remain safe as long as I performed. They were insurance, guarantees of continued cooperation. I could visit Milwaukee once a month. Under supervision, of course. I'd watch my relationship deteriorate from a distance, but Jennifer would stay alive and unaware. He stood up, straightened his tie, and welcomed me to the team. My desk was on the 8th floor. I started Monday. That was 4 months ago. I'm 28 years old. I work for a Chicago city contractor that does community development consulting. On paper, I help identify urban renewal opportunities. In reality, I coordinate gang violence to clear neighborhoods for gentrification. I wear khakis and button-downs. I attend community meetings. To anyone watching, I'm a young professional helping rebuild Chicago. Jennifer still lives in Milwaukee. She doesn't understand why I can't move back, why I only visit once a month, why everything changed. The relationship is dying slowly. Soon she'll move on, meet someone real, someone who deserves her. That will hurt, but at least she'll be alive. Marcus's family still lives in Englewood, unaware how close they came to death, unaware that the man who killed their son works for the politician who ordered it. This confession is my only act of rebellion. I'm recording this on equipment the Alderman doesn't know about, uploading it through networks he doesn't control. When I'm done, I'll release it and hope someone understands. The gang violence you see on the news isn't random. It's coordinated. Politicians use gangs as urban renewal tools, clearing areas for development. The gentrification you celebrate as neighborhood improvement started with systematic violence against the people who lived there first. Every coffee shop built on the South Side stands on the grave of a displaced black family. Alderman Morrison is one example, but the system is everywhere. Every major city has politicians using street gangs as tools. The war on gangs is theater. The real war is on poor people, on communities that occupy valuable real estate. I killed my best friend for these people. I abandoned the woman I love. I'll probably die working for them. And Alderman Morrison will keep getting re-elected, keep winning community service awards, keep being celebrated while kids from Englewood destroy themselves building his real estate empire. That's the truth they don't want you to know. The real criminals aren't in gangs. They're in City Hall, wearing suits, voting on zoning laws. They kill with policies and development plans, not guns. And they're untouchable because the system protects them. My name is James Carter. I lied about that too. David Jenkins was just another mask. But this truth is real. If this story opened your eyes to how power really works in American cities, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this everywhere. Alderman Morrison and politicians like him depend on silence, on everyone looking away, on violence being blamed on gangs instead of the people who weaponize them. Your subscription, your share, your comment, it matters. It's proof. Truth can still surface. Hit that like button. Every like pushes this story to more people. The algorithm doesn't care about justice, but it cares about engagement. So engage. Make noise. Don't let this disappear into the void. My freedom is gone. My life is over. But this truth is yours now. What you do with it is up to you.